In today's video, we're going to be talking about social constructionism and understanding how we as people are socially constructed. So, this idea of social constructionism comes from the sense and the idea that, insofar as much that we as human beings are socialized beings, that we ultimately have to understand how we are each socially constructed, that we are all an arrangement of different features that connect us to other people. So, with that being said, there's ultimately a dialectical approach to how we should relate to each other and how we should relate to ourselves. And in doing so, it creates a sense of identity, it creates a sense of good character, and we then are able to learn and then grow with each other. I wouldn't be me if I didn't draw a picture to kind of show you what I'm talking about, okay? So this is what I call the dialectic approach. So I don't know if you can see that. So you have as above, so below, as within, so without. And then right there in the center is this idea of centeredness of being. The centeredness of being is where your talent, your creative flow comes from, your artistic flow. It's where your identity stems from. And it's also an important part of having a healthy sense of identity and consciousness because the inner reality is going to always create the outer form. This then leads me to that mind body dualism that Rene Descartes talked about, this relationship. And I really want to take a more of a biblical approach to it. It's really just mind, body, soul, or mind, body, spirit, right? It's really about alignment. And so going back to the dialectic approach of as above, so below, that right alignment is also connected to having a good sense of character. It's also connected to having a right ordering of consciousness. And as we will explore in future videos, how what God was producing in his people was a right ordering of consciousness, was a degree of being upright to him. Alignment can be described as being upright in the biblical sense, or it is an expression of wholeness in a Jungian sense of the idea. Alignment is a right ordering of consciousness that creates a coherent and cohesive narrative identity for the individual that is ultimately a reflection of how well they organize the archetypal contents that they use to tell the stories about who they are. So, as a person, right, as a human being, we can't escape archetypes. We are all formed and made by these different identities that kind of shape who we are. And so we are all a reflection of these archetypes that live within the inside of us as people. And the reason why that is because the macrocosm, your objective reality, is going to mirror your microcosm, right? Saying that it's supposed to create a degree of balance for the individual. So, for gender nuanced people, that we also have a degree of alignment, right? But our experiences being gendered the way that they are ultimately reflect a more synthesized individuation of how we ultimately understand ourselves as people. And as gender nuanced people, what I say is that we have a synthesized individuation of masculine and feminine complementarity that reflects the gender core and their awareness of self, or the gender nuanced person's awareness of the degree to which they are gendered, right? The performative interplay of these gendered attributes variegates from person to person and manifests in the archetype of the individual. So, just using androgyny as an example. Androgyny is the type of gender expression that I feel like most people are kind of familiar with. It's kind of the one that people can point out to and say, yep, that person's androgynous. I give the analogy of walking into a flower shop and seeing an entire array of different flowers. They all have different names, but That's a rose. You know what a rose looks like. That's kind of what androgyny is. And so, although you are an androgynous person, that androgyny is going to look different on everybody because every androgynous person has a different interplay of masculine and feminine attributes. So, for me, right, I always use the example of saying, like, Hansel and Gretel, right? That Hansel handsome. So when people kind of see my experience as an androgynous person, it kind of it's definitely feminine, it's definitely sus, but it's more on the more masculine side. There are androgynous men who are more feminine presenting, who have more Gretel than Hansel. So they may wear the makeup, they may wear the wigs, they may wear the high heels and the purses and the dresses, but there are also androgynous people who are more masculine. There are androgynous people who are straight. That has nothing to do with a person's sexual orientation. You have androgynous people who are straight and masculine, but they just have this interplay of masculine and feminine features that have been assigned to be feminine by the society that they live in. So you have mental, physical, and metaphysical substance that is being upright. And then I show you how it's connected to consciousness, the different aspects of consciousness, where mental substance is awareness, your prefrontal cortex, and then how this sort of consciousness is connected to being androgynous. So Hansel is conscious that his body is masculine and that his spirit, his inner essence, is feminine. So that is my little quick mini series about social constructionism, how it is important, why it's important, and how we ultimately understand ourselves to be socially constructed as human beings, how we are all composed of these different elements as people. And social constructionism ultimately leads to a degree of a right ordering of consciousness and alignment with oneself. It produces good character, and I use the example of like being androgynous, how we understand ourselves to be gender nuanced people, given the fact of how these different masculine and feminine elements they interplay to create the variegated expressions of gender that we have and how they shape our archetypes as people. So if you like this video, please don't forget to comment and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next series.